Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kelber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hey, wait, we're live, everybody. How's everybody doing? You may have noticed that Roland Mann is not with us this week. He has a touch of March Madness. So if you know Roland, that's where he is. And Roberta Conroy is also out. She also had a thing to do, probably related to March Madness as well. But joining me tonight, we have the man in the mask guy, Mike Belcher.
Howdy.
We've also got inker extraordinaire Thomas Flormonte.
Howdy do.
Who's managed not to fall off a bicycle this week, so that's good too.
Yeah, look at my shirt.
Can you see my shirt? We have a Tim TK from the Tuesday Silverline stream. He's hosting the board in Roland's absence because I don't know how to do any of that stuff. I am a child of car radio, and that's where my technology expertise begins and ends. I don't know if any Silverline Kickstarter news or what's the place where we are now? It's not Kickstarter. It's the other place.
Fun My Comic.
That's it. Fun My Comic.
Roland did, I believe. Kablam got him all of the Trump's 2 books for Diamond. So I think he got them off to Diamond before he headed out of town. So or wherever he's at.
So if Trump's 2 is coming out, that means there's still time to pick up Trump's number 1. You'll notice I have my copy. So get out to your local friendly retailer and spend a few dollars.
And then Kayla's 2 now in the Diamond catalog?
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
If it is. So check your Diamond catalog, place a pre-order, because that's the best way to make sure you get something. And Mike, you've got something coming up too, don't you? Am I right about that, or have I just made something up?
No, I'm offering a book for my Man in the Mask series for pre-order right now at my nice little newsletter, the Military Gazette.
Awesome. Do you want to drop the link in the comments?
I can let's see how do we do that. I don't think I've ever done that.
I think you just got to pretend that you're a commenter
Okay.
and paste it in. Remember, if it's not a car radio, I can't do it.
Well, I'm right there with you. If it's I think I could do ham radio.
Oh, there you go. No, I would. I could do CD radio. I could probably say Breaker 19, but I learned that from a movie. So
What, Convoy or Smoking the Bandit?
Smoking the Bandit.
Smoking the Bandit, obviously, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never. Convoy did nothing for me. I was a Smoky person.
Oh.
So
Riding in the convoy.
that's C.W. McCall. That's what that is. All right, there we go. The link is in the comments. So get to it. So tonight's topic is being led by Mr. Mike Belcher. Thank goodness, and it's called Publisher or Be Published. And so I don't know what those things mean. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he's going to post the question or posit the question for all of us to debate. So far away.
Well, as all our topics have been the last couple of weeks, from origin story to how it gets on page. Now it's the section of, do you look for a publisher or do you take it upon yourself and just do it? Because, there's a lot of resources out there than there used to be. And,
That's right. Yeah,
but it's a personal choice, not one avenue is for everyone. And then that's pretty much the way that I kind of looked at this topic. I did a certain kind of way, but, other people did other ways that were very positive for them. And I'm curious how everybody kind of sees their role in comics today as, published or be published, or being publisher or be published.
Because it's an interesting topic, because years ago, when I was first starting out reading comic books, if you didn't work for Marvel or DC, there would be like one or two startups that might come along, like the Atlas Seaboard stuff or the Tower Comics in the 60s, or some other, third-party comic book company that would sort of launch and then sort of burn out. But in general, that was pretty much it. If you didn't make it in there, you didn't have many avenues. And then in the late 70s and early 80s, there were a lot of independent publishers coming out, everything from Dean Mulaney's Eclipse to Mike Friedrich's Starreach, and that gave people the opportunities that existed outside of Marvel and DC, but creators weren't necessarily publishing stuff. Dave Sim did, and I think the ElfQuest people did,
and, yeah,
and one or two others. But in general, that wasn't necessarily a path because it was hard.
Oh yeah,
and now it's easier, but that doesn't mean it's easy.
No, hard.
And so because in general, people would like to make a living or make money at it and not lose money.
Yeah,
and so now you've got the internet, you've got webtoons, you host your own website, you could self-publish, you could, the sky is basically the limit. The resources are there. So I guess, Mr. Flormonte, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, you got even places like us with Kablam will help you get your books out too through Indie Planet. So there's, plenty of online stores. So there's, it's kind of like you were saying, there's so many more ways to actually get your book out, but can you make any money at it? That's the thing.
Right. Well, because I think for me, it depends on what the goal is. If the goal is making money, I mean, that's the hardest path possible. I think
that sure is. Yeah.
If the goal is to not lose money, that's better, sort of. But it's not necessarily. I mean, who knows how you get to that point where you lose less money? And
with print on demand, especially with places like us. It doesn't cost you anything other than you getting the book done. You have to, you have to get the book done, but you don't have to go through and print, thousands of copies and have them sitting in your garage waiting for an order to come in, ship them out.
Right.
We basically do all that for you. But you still have to, write it, pencil, ink it, letter, color. So you still have to, if you're doing it yourself, then, that's one thing. But if you've got to have a crew of people that's trying to get your book out for you or, with you, do you do you front all those people some sort of page rate, so they'll do the book for you, or do you make them part of your crew and give them part of the cut as it goes, so they'll be part of the profit of the whole thing?
I'm sort of a big believer in paying the artist, because I'm sort of a lazy writer, and to me, in general, I know it takes time, but it doesn't cost me necessarily resources to write something. Whereas an artist who can do a page a day, that's 24 days or 20 to do 24 pages.
Yeah.
And that's expensive time for an artist to spend that. I can write a comic in 2 days. And so the drawing of it takes 24 days, and the letterer still takes his time, and the colorist still takes their time. So I think I don't need to be compensated necessarily if I'm driving the business, but I think if you want good creators to deliver some of their best work, you should pay them, and you should still make them part of the team, and you should still listen, if this becomes a movie or a toy or a fidget spinner or whatever, we're still gonna split it, so that way it is more of a team. And so, but Mike, what made you publish?
Well, as I said before, when I was a teenager, of course, the goal would be Marvel, DC, because that was what everybody did. You weren't anything unless you did Marvel and DC first.
Right.
But then you get exposed to, like you were talking about, all the 80s independents, the first comics, the Eclipse, those types that kind of showed you a different way. I got the bug to do my own stuff. And,
right.
And it wasn't just the idea, I think, there's always that perception that, oh, you just want to publish your own stuff because nobody else wants it. But, I kind of tailored how I did things to my education. And, I always kid about, I kind of fell into a profession by following comics. I went to school looking for certain things, and it just kind of added up to a graphic design, career. And I found out that I really like preparing things for print. I like to, and so, as I've gone over the years, the idea of not only owning the material, but kind of going over the field goal with it, doing the whole shebang of getting it ready for print and having a print quality, and smelling that paper when you get it out of the box. And it really, it really is there's something to it. There's a passion of, like I said, not only creating your own stuff, but having control of the end result on top of that, because there's plenty of people that want to create their own material,
right?
And self-publishing isn't the way they want to go about it. They want to go to a Dark Horse. They want to go to a Boom or a Dynamite or whoever's still accepting submissions. I have no idea. I haven't tried in years, so I don't know. But that's just as commendable, because it's hard work, because you're having to facilitate the entire creative process. Because when you're sending stuff off to Tommy, I have to give him something. He can't make it for me. If I paid him, he might. He could do a great job if I paid him. But for him just to hit print so I can get my books back, I have to get him down there. So I have to kind of know the process. I make sure that the double page spreads aren't on 4 and 5, and make sure that all the
they're supposed to be on 4 and 5.
Oh, sorry, 3 and 4. Sorry. That was the correct. See, I'm doing the correct way in my head. So yeah, double page spreads on 3 and 4. So make sure they're not there, and make sure that everything's within the margins, that I didn't do the lettering, over here in the bleed.
Right.
But that's the kind of stuff that fulfills me, in addition to, because as far as the question, publisher or be published, the publisher part is really another draw, because it's that self-satisfaction of, this is me. I created this whole project and this book, and I took it, like I said, over the field goal, and it's its own self-satisfaction. It's the hardest thing in the world, because you ain't Marvel and DC. Because you don't have those resources. So, it's not as it's not easy, but you have to take your fulfillment where you get it.
So it's interesting to me, because the Marvel and DC have those resources, but again, and Marvel and DC generally pay a rate that is livable.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, depending on how fast you are and how many books you have. But because they're corporately owned, they can cut you off at any point.
Yeah.
And then what do you do the following month or the following year or whatever to try to get back in the game? And because I know lots of guys who worked for Marvel and DC in the sort of the boom years of the 80s and 90s, and then when that stopped, they hadn't created anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they had created comics for Marvel and DC, but they hadn't created anything that they controlled or that they owned.
Mm-hmm.
So they were just sort of stuck. And I feel for those guys.
Oh my gosh! I mean, think of all the stuff that's on the screen right now. I mean, it's like the Spider-Verse that came over last summer. You know, Spider-Man 2099 was a great feature of it. And where was Peter David? He's in a rehabilitation center begging for money at GoFundMe because, you know, and there's his creation up on screen. I mean, granted, he worked, made a work for hire. You know, we all have to look at that way. You know, he signed a work for hire. But at the same token, you see these guys that worked at these corporations and never went outside to, see what else is there because they were working a job just like, my dad's worked a job, your dad, and so on. I mean, it's a job, but I'm with you. I mean, they have their creations that are being used. They're being, facilitated in other manners. And that just really never appealed to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what I like are because there are some creators who do this where they sort of dip into mainstream comics and do a run on, let's say, the Fantastic Four or Batman or whatever, and sort of build up their name and their audience and keep their social media presence up, and then they use that to dip into their own creator-owned thing, and they
build their name up so people they get recognized. Right.
Yeah, and then when they get that out of their system, they go back to Marvel or DC and do another Batman run or whatever, and then they do another independent comic, and so they sort of go back and forth. And then there's the Image guys who just basically said, no corporate stuff because we don't like the contract and you're not going to give us favorable terms that we want. So then they go off and they not only make their own comics, they make their own company.
Yeah.
And so I got into a discussion. I did one of those Facebook arguments that you're not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Where a guy was saying that it's a shame that people are not growing up and want to work for Marvel and DC anymore. And I said, well, some people still do, which is fine. But a lot of people have realized that there's other stuff to do. There's more game in town that you could play. And so they've either gone independent, they've gone for smaller publishers, they've gone for places where they can own, they've gone to self-publishing. And so there's just a ton of different opportunities that didn't exist. And every creator sort of growing up now understands the contract problems of Marvel and DC from the 70s and 80s. And, why does anybody want to possibly go through that if they can just make their own stuff?
Yeah, but like I said, but you have to get there. I mean, you think of, I was in that period of time when you had Jeff Smith and Terry Moore and Colleen Duran and the whole self-publishing boom, and it was so attractive to me. But what they had to do to get to that point, and my goodness, to get a readership, from scratch during that time of the boom and then the bust. I can't imagine of the 90s.
Jeff Smith is one of those guys who, for me anyway, seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like there was no sort of thing where he's doing something for DC, where he's doing something for Marvel, he's doing something in the independent comics. It's just like nothing. He just came out of nowhere, and Dave Latham from Stray Bullets seemed to just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, he was doing Valiant, and he was Shooter's Boy for a while, and then all of a sudden he went that indie way, and it's like, okay, yeah.
And we got a couple of comments from Wayne Klingman. Hey, Wayne, how you doing? He said, it's hard work, but it can be done. And he said, readership building is the key. And that's the thing. It's gotten a lot. I mean, it's still not easy, but it's gotten easier to build a readership now through social media and the 400 different social media platforms that you have to keep track of. So Mike, you're a big social media user for the Man of the Mask. So how do you figure out what platform to use?
Well, you start with all of them, and then you just kind of
try
to figure off what you can handle.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty much it. I mean, it's, from Twitter and Instagram and then, Facebook, you make connections. But then, as far as the online stuff, Man the Mask is on Global Comics. I tried out Webtoons, and it's got a huge audience, but I don't know necessarily if it has a huge audience for the kind of material that I do.
Right.
And so, I found that kind of early in posting stuff. It really wasn't, that kind of an atmosphere. Global Comics has been a little bit better, a little more of a reaction. But the newsletter that I started, last year, Substack, therefore a little bit, everybody was talking about all the pros were going to Substack. And
Right.
then it kind of settled down, that wasn't such an alternative anymore because you had people going there instead of going to Image.
Right.
Because somebody at Substack had a lot of cash and was starting to throw money at some of these comics pros. And Substack can work if you continually, it's like with everything, you got to keep on with content.
Right.
And that's something that I tried to figure out right off the bat, what was something that I could engage people with and be kind of interactive, but at the same token, I work, I love to be able to do Man in the Mask all the time, but I can't.
Right.
I do it in between stuff. And, sometimes it's very inconvenient to do it and I forget. But the good thing about the way I went with Substack is I kind of involved parts of the character. In the Millerton Gazette is a newspaper that's in my little fictional universe. And so I was trying to do it in a way that would kind of be interactive with, the readership. And so I offer the comics just like they were comics in a newspaper, or if I have articles that have something to do with what's going on in the city that I can use to back up another story.
Right.
That, I said, I try to use it so that I could be interested in it. Because, again, when you're doing this stuff, it could turn into a slog. So at least I also know for being a reader, on the other side of that, what would be interesting to a comic reader that would be a little bit of a bonus. Because, again, you have Patreon, you can beg people for money that way. And I don't do Kickstarters, not because I don't believe in them. It's just, again, I'm one guy. Right. And I'd rather focus on the material than me trying to figure out how I'm going to sell it. And I'm kind of one of those, if you build it, they will eventually come. I don't know if they'll come, but they'll eventually come. Hopefully I live long enough that I will see it come by trying to build up the material. But that's the kind of stuff that I utilize. I said the Millerton Gazette is just an avenue of being able to get the info out. It's being a promo without being a shill.
Right.
That's kind of the idea I have behind it. So that's how I utilize social.
So Philman says, hello, Silverline crew. Welcome, Philman. And Comic Crusaders says, salute, fellas, and chat. Welcome, group. Welcome to the group. Tommy, you do your own stuff too, right?
Yeah, but it was. I started doing it when I was actually working with you guys and doing the Marvel stuff. So, not that I have a name, but it was back when I started doing the Zomboy stuff. I was able to get a good little following, and I hadn't been able to do it as much as I wanted to lately. Especially when I moved down here to Orlando, and then we started Kablam, and then that's just taken up all my time. And the Silverline stuff that I am working on, and other projects, that we've talked about and such. Right. But trying to get, I've got 2 or 3 stories, my Zomboy story, my Mystery Girl stories, and I got a new Little Nay and So-So story that I need to get out. I go to shows all the time, and the people are coming by, where's the next book? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. So I draw them a free drawing, and I'm like, oh, I'll try to have it next time. I'm sorry. I just don't have the time. So yeah, it's cool to, and I did, so with the Zomboy stuff, the original run of Zomboy back in the 90s, late 90s, I put them in Diamond, and I was getting 2,000-3,000 copies were selling of those things right back at the time. That's when I didn't even know how to draw, and I was still selling them pretty good. He doesn't look as cool as he does now, but but yeah, I self-published it, but nowadays it's more of I'm just doing it because I've got a little fan following that want to, that still keep bugging me for the next book, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I love doing it. It's fun to
Well,
do.
yeah, get to it. Get cracking.
No poop.
I don't want to speak for Mike here, but he's outpacing you.
He is.
So
I don't know about that, but
He is.
no,
And I finished up the second book of the Champion Miss Fury thing a couple of months ago, and I really needed to finish coloring issue 5 of the Mystery Girls. That's my Scooby-Doo kind of ish book, and I've just not had I just not done it. I don't know why. There's no reason why I hadn't. And I hate, and I want to get those trades out as soon as I got that last issue is all done. It's all lettered. I just need to color it, and I can flat color it pretty quick. I just hadn't done it. So that's another thing with the publishing or bringing it to somebody to publish for you. When you're doing it yourself, you got to have a lot of discipline. And if you're busy living life and, it's kind of, don't get stuff done sometimes.
Also, you gotta marry someone who has good health insurance.
My wife.
Yeah.
Disney health insurance is really
there you go. Oh, is that why you moved to Orlando?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So since you and I'll do this in order since there's just 3 of us here. So Tommy, I mean, you have your own printer, like it's right there down the street from you, basically. What advice would you give to somebody who wanted to publish their own comic?
I see. This sounds pretty crappy for me to say because I hadn't done my own. It's you gotta be consistent. Like right now, I'm working with a young guy that I'm kind of I wouldn't call him mentoring him or anything, but he kind of thinks of me that way. And I'm like, he got his first issue done. We helped him, talked him through getting it done and everything, and it's been done, and it's 2 or 3, 4 months, 6 months. I think it's been 4 or 5 months. And I'm like, have you even started on the second one? Because he's able to, he's now going into stores and stuff and around the area and selling copies all over the place. And he's, and I'm like, well, are people asking you about the second issue? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, have you even started on it? And he goes, no. I'm like, have you given up? Why, if you've not even, are you not going to do the second issue? And he goes, well, sometime. And I'm like, no, that's not the right answer. The sometime is not because why are you even doing the first one? If, why are you promoting it if you're not even going to try to get the second one done?
Because what I found is when I talk to, because I've talked to people who publish their own comics who are self-published from the 80s to today. I run into them all the time at conventions, and I'll see them again this weekend at WonderCon. And every time you talk to them, there's the impression that they live for this. Like, yeah, they have a day job. Yeah, they have regular issues, but they understand. And again, and I realize, Tommy, it sounds like I'm picking on you, but I'm not.
No,
but they know exactly, these stories are in their heads, and they got to get them out. And so I think that's it. It sounds like this person that you're talking about hasn't gotten to that point yet. He just wanted
I think he thought it was cool to get it done, and then now he's done it and he's done with it.
Right.
It's like, well, then why are you promoting it?
Because again, decades ago, Dave Sims said, "I'm going to do 300 issues." That's a huge commitment. And the Peonies started ElfQuest, and they followed several different publishers, including self-publishing. They were going to do that regardless. And Jeff Smith, same thing. You get the feeling he would draw bone even if he wasn't publishing it. And so I think there's a drive, and I think, and Mike and I have talked about this before, that even if Mike wasn't publishing it, he wouldn't stop drawing.
Yeah.
So
making me feel bad.
That's my role
Well,
here.
for me, when I'm working with other people, I tend to get the work done a lot faster when I know somebody that I'm working with somebody. But my own stuff, it just drags. I don't know what it's not a non being motivated. I've got all kind of crazy little stories like we talked about last week. I'm a pantser, so I've got all these short little stories that I like to do, and I've got a ton of them. But when I'm working with you guys and stuff, I tend to feel obligated. I don't know, is that the right word? And I just crank, and I just having such a great time. But when it comes to my own stuff, oh, it's just things get in the way. I don't know what the problem is.
But out here, I'll make an excuse for you. I think it's different because you're in comics sort of all day.
Yeah, it's true.
And
that can't be my excuse. That's a sucky excuse.
I'm giving you an out, my friend.
No. I can't. I've used that before. I've used that excuse. I'm printing comics all day. I see comics, from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6, 7 o'clock when I leave. Kablam, and then I come home and I'm expected to draw some more comics. Well, I'm sitting in front of the TV. I can draw comics while I'm just sitting there. Either I'm playing on the computer or I'm watching. I could easily be working on the comic. It's just how else did I get all these other books done? I'm sitting in front of the TV. It's just getting it done.
So Mike and I are going to start texting you now, saying get to work.
You should. You should. All my fans would. I don't like to call them fans. All the people that want me to get those next books done. Next books done. That doesn't sound right. Bad English. See, I told you I'm not a writer.
You're a pantser. So we got some comments from people. Paige Alfred. Wait, I can't read. Paige Alfred says, Silverline, what up? Hello from the Page One Comics crew. Welcome. And David Ace Gutierrez says, is Tommy self-editing too much? Are you? Perhaps. Madness Comic Network says, hey, Wayne Phil. And we want to wish Pops a continued happiness on his road to recovery. And we all hope he's doing better. And I think that's it for comments for right now. So, Mike, well, go back to you. What advice would you give people who want to self-publish?
Yeah, buddy, give me some advice so I can finish up my book.
Right, let's beat up on Tommy while we got him on the ropes now.
Sure. I'm terrible. I don't know what the problem is.
Self-publishing, you got to be organized. I mean, you can create as a pantser, but as far as everything else, you do kind of have to kind of put your ducks in a row. I mean, you have to have a kind of a way of doing it. So, I mean, if you're thinking about self-publishing, I mean, how much of the burden is on you? Are you the writer? Are you doing everything? Or are you going to find somebody else? Because, luckily there's tons of people that you can find if you're looking for creative types. But if you're like me, there's a lot of roles that I've assumed and thrust upon my own family members because I don't have the money to go out and find people to kind of help me along the way. You just kind of have to look at that first. The story's great. The story is the first part. But again, when you're doing the self-publishing part, it's the business part. Right. You could do this for yourself because, again, Tommy's doing the Lord's work. Because until Tommy and Barry came along with Kablam, you were looking, if you were a self-publisher, you were looking at minimums 1,000 to 1,500 copies from Canadian publisher or Canadian printers, and having to know that world and everything.
And back in the 90s, black and white books minimum of 3,000.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say too. I mean, that was all the stuff, because when I was looking into this in the 90s and getting all these, it was very discouraging because I knew I couldn't sell it, and I knew the market, I knew the way that the industry was crashing, and that was a detriment to me for a number of years of that. Not being able to really get into it because, I've got the creative, but to be able to actually make the comics, I was never going to get that money unless I was going to have to go into some serious debt to do it. And when Kablam comes along, the whole thing just switches to people like me, people that are, as he put it, if you just want to do this as a passion, if your idea of just wanting to do a comic, as he was talking about the person earlier, it was a one and done thing. You can get one copy, Tommy can print you one copy there.
You can be done.
You don't have to have a ton of
Get
copies.
it out of your
It's yours.
system.
That's right. Yeah.
Get it out of your system. But if you're, serious and you're doing either crowdfunding, you're doing your own thing, you're doing pre-orders, you're doing cons, I can order 30 copies from them, and in a week or two, I'll have them, and I'll have them at a con. And if I need more, that way I'm not stuffing them underneath my bed because I have so many of them, and I'm, ducking the bill man outside from the printer because I couldn't pay for all. And like I said, Kablam, like I said, it changed the atmosphere in self-publishing because it made it accessible to everybody. I mean, exactly. Like I said, you have one copy to what's the most you guys have ever printed for one? As far as I don't know how much your print runs go up to.
Oh, several thousand. But
that's what I'm saying. Your potential's there. I mean, you can do as many as you want.
But it's at that point that we even recommend if you 3,000 books, you need to go to an offset printer.
Right, exactly. Offset or web press. Yeah.
Right.
Unless you need your books in 2 weeks.
Right.
Because we can turn them around faster. So that's another fast or good thing with us.
So
that's the difference between the offset and digital. Digital, the print book 1 costs the same as the print book 2. There's no price break when you're doing the offset.
Right.
All the pre-press part of it is cost. So once you get all the plates done and you turn the press on, it doesn't cost anything to print those books.
Yeah.
For us, it's just every book costs the same, click rate, click.
Yeah, and then the thing about it is if you're somebody like me that's made a mistake on the first 20, 30 runs that I did, hey, guess what, guys? I got this new file. You guys download that one.
Put that in.
So if you got mistakes, it's even better for mistakes. I mean, you can refresh your files without, again, going into some major debt with offset.
Because that's for me, that's one of the keys that I like about digital printing is if you get to a point where you've caught the mistake, even though you've seen it like 30 times and you let it through, and you finally get the printed copy and you go, oh, dang, I've done it. You can go back and you just send a new file over.
Yeah, you just didn't print 3,000 copies that you're going to have to sell at a show and kind of overlook the fact that you got page 4 and 7 swapped around by accident.
I think we've all seen over the years where Marvel or DC have printed these giant hardcovers, and then somebody has said, "Hey, you know what? Your double page spread is on the wrong page, or your this page is out of order, or this page."
You got a duplicate page in there. That kind of thing.
So, and they're just screwed.
Too late now.
Yeah, because they've done a fancy hardcover, so they're gonna have to just eat it, and that's So do you think the rise, something that Mike mentioned a few minutes ago, was going to conventions? Do you think the rise of the ton of regional shows in the last 15 years has been helpful to people who can set up?
It sure seems like it. Going to the back when we started Kablam, it used to be fun. Barry and I would walk up and down the aisle, and I would flip over books going, that's one of ours. That's one of ours. That's one of ours. That's one of because, so all these shows, I mean, it's been pretty good. I mean, let's pretend like COVID didn't happen.
Right.
And well, a lot of people didn't think COVID happened. But you know what I'm saying? That's a different story. But yeah, all these shows have really made it so everybody can, there's a spot for all these self-published books or you being your own little publisher kind of thing. 'Cause all you do is you pay your $100 to get a table spot and, see if you can sell your books.
Because I think if you have, since you can do the limited print runs at a place like Kablam, and you can almost test market your thing. Like
yes.
I know there's a big Daytona show coming up in September of this year. It was like a 2-day thing where you could, if you wanted to test your idea and get some audience feedback, that's a pretty good show to just set up and see where it goes.
See if it's worth, you got a crazy hair up your rear end. See, Roland's not here. We can cuss now, right? You got a crazy hair up your butt.
Tim TK is here, and I think he's underage, so we have to be careful.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So you can, you put that book out. It's kind of what I always tell folks. Put out if you have a whole bunch of different ideas, do one or two of them, and if it doesn't work, just put it to the side. Work on the next one.
Right.
Quit working on, unless it's your pet project where you just want to get out 50 copies or 50 issues of something, and you're going to do it regardless if anybody buys it or not. But I kind of always thought of myself as I hate saying it, as a sellout kind of a thing. I like to do books that I'm only going to do books that I like to do, but I like them to sell also. So,
Right.
and I've got so many ideas that I could just, if this idea is not working, I got another one. I'll just work on it. I'm just as happy.
That's the thing too, because I've done some work where for clients, and especially in television, where I've gotten notes from the producer or whatever to change the writing. It's like, well, I'll we might debate that to a certain extent, but I'm happy to change it, or I'm happy to come up with a different idea. Like, it's not.
Yeah,
I've got more. If you don't like that joke, I got a dozen more jokes.
You're not hurting my feelings. I'll just work on the next one.
I got other things. I never saw myself as like, I have the one precious idea, and I'm going to see that through to the end. I'm more.
We've made it so that you didn't have to work on. I mean, it's a lot of work to make a comic, right? We all know. And so when you spend that whole, say you were able to do it in a month, you spent that whole month and you did a book, and then you get it out there and people are like, this is so stupid. Why are you doing it? Did you realize, you go, yeah, that was a really bad idea. I shouldn't, so why, unless it's a pet project,
Right.
Why waste your time on the next? Is that a bad thought? A bad way to think of
it?
No.
There's a great line in the movie Ed Wood, where somebody in the audience comes up to Ed Wood and says, "This movie is terrible," and Ed Wood just goes, "My next one will be better."
I know, exactly. That's the way I kind of look at it. It's, that's what I meant. That I'm kind of a sellout. I'd like to, I've got some. I mean, it sounds bad to say it that way, but I like to work on stuff that other people are going to read. I've got so many silly ideas. I'll just do the next silly idea. Maybe you'll like that one.
Well, because Van Gogh didn't sell a painting and then he killed himself, and so I think that's I'd like to sell a painting and not kill myself, and so I think that's sort of where I draw the line. And so, and what about you, Mike? I mean, you've sort of, I don't know how to say this. You've sort of narrowed your focus to one character, one book, and an ongoing series. So how?
The way I tailored it,
how did you end up with that one book?
Yeah, how did you end up with the one commitment?
Did you have
it was more time, it was more, it was one of those things where I'm with Tommy. If some idea doesn't work, you move on to something else.
Yeah.
But at the same token, I had to look at my motivations of what I wanted to do. And so I kind of built something with a bunch of different characters in it, that if something didn't work, I could use one of the other characters.
Sure.
That was kind of some of the purpose in creating a bunch of different things, a bunch of different characters, but still in the same little thing, because, I'm, again, it's a time thing. What can I focus on? I love helping. I letter on the side. Man, the mask isn't the only thing that I do. I letter on the side. I help. So those other impulses, I get to follow other people's impulses, other creations, because again, during my day job, I bring a lot of dreams together with publishers and the creators who've been wanting to self-publish all their lives, or their novel, their great American novel, and doing those are so satisfying. So when it comes to comics, Man the Mask fits a niche for me. It allows me to do a story, but it also allows me to create a world under one title. And so if one issue I want to go someplace else, I've got the characters to do that, because again, I'm trying to build a world that will allow me to do a noir story if I want to do other types of stories. But at the same token, I'm still building a Man the Mask brand while I'm doing it.
Right. So it sounded like you narrow cast it on your one character, but you wide cast it enough to get a bigger world.
Exactly.
So you could have a giant playground
Yeah.
if you decide to sort of suddenly shift into a story that catches your eye.
Exactly. That way, because that's the way I've been. You know, if something catches my fancy, I'll shift. And the first 4 issues of the regular series, it turns into different stories. The first one is what you would call the first issue of In the World, and then the second one, he's not even the main character. I use someone else in the world to propel the story. And the third issue, I do a time travel story, and then the fourth one, it's just the villain of the week. So in 4 issues, I've done a different kind of casting that most people wouldn't have done probably in the first 4 issues of a book.
Right.
But I wanted to show the unpredictability, that it wasn't just one type of book. That was my intention. I didn't want to get bored. I wanted to make sure that anything was possible. You don't just look at this character and think, oh, he's like Daredevil. Oh, he's like Nightwing. He's in that mold. Well, he might be in that mold as far as running the roofs or whatever else, but I have other interests that I kind of like to throw into comics, because if they're all the same, they would get very boring. So if you use the same story over and over, you tend to yourself get bored, and that would keep me, because again, these things take a very long time for me to make, and so they have to be interesting. So again, it may be one book under a narrow focus, but for me, I'm telling a bunch of different stories.
So when so 2 things, and I'm not sure which question to go with first, but it sounds like your approach to the story is very similar to a guy named Will Eisner.
Probably there's some there, yeah. I when I discovered Eisner and a lot of the storytelling techniques, I knew that I probably couldn't even break a 16th of them, but I felt like there was a lot of my interest in there, because I love my lead character, but at the same token, typically when you're watching a story, sometimes your lead character is your most uninteresting, because he's the guy who's going to save the day eventually. But what if there's somebody he's needing to say, well, what's their point of view?
Right.
Where is their trouble at? Because, I'm trying to build a good guy who is got a lot of golden age. He's not troubled. He's not seeking revenge.
Right.
So when you're having a lot of opposition or antagonism with that kind of character, you have to watch it, because
Right.
you don't want to go over your mission statement.
Right.
So who do you give the conflicts to? Well, you have to create conflicts that he has to help come in and solve. And,
Right.
and like I said, that was the thing about Eisner. A lot of those stories, especially the spirit stories, weren't about the spirit. They were about other characters that lived in Central City, and they were the ones that usually were in trouble. And so sometimes the spirit would pop in at the end of the story, and it was much more interesting getting there. But once you got there, there's the hero. And so that was a lot of the motivation also, because I also didn't see a lot of that in the market. I didn't see a lot of that people was telling those stories anymore. And I just, that's kind of, I kind of picked that and went my own direction with it.
Because there's an old TV show called Have Gun Will Travel.
Yeah.
With Richard Boone, which has a very similar approach, where there's a drama between 2 characters in the Western town, and Paladin is a guy who just sort of gets sucked into it.
Yep.
And I think it's a classic storytelling trope, and it really works. I think it's and so when you're doing the, like, you've drawn it, you've written it, you've drawn it, you've lettered it, and now you're doing all the pre-press stuff to get it ready for printing. How do you stay interested in the story at that point? Or do you have a different hat or a different mood shift? Are you bipolar?
Well, the hat I have on right now is getting it ready to send to Tommy. I'm going through it, and I'm doing it from a different point of view, because I drew it, and I turned it over to my son to color it. So now I had to go through and we had to have a little conversation here and there. It's like, I don't like it here. And so I turn into publisher mode or editor mode.
Right.
When I'm getting it back from him, because then I'm going through it. Okay, well, I forgot to tell you, I didn't make a note. So it's a completely different vibe from me, the creator. It was me. I want to make sure the book's represented the way I want it to be. So then I become more possessive of the final quality of it.
Do
And
you
so I'm the editor right now.
do you find yourself talking about Mike in the third person at that point? Oh, I don't think Mike would like this. I think Mike would want you to color it this way. Mike would.
No, I hope not. We'll have to ask him if he sees it that way. I hope not. But he's really receptive, and so I'm the same way. But a lot of the stuff isn't precious because as he's coloring it, I'm asking him. Now, some of this stuff, is this stuff clear to you? Because my end goal has always been, if you'll never see this stuff later, can you still follow the story?
Right.
And so he's kind of he's my assistant editor when it comes to the clarity part. So yeah, I mean, I utilize him. Like I said, we're in the post-production stage. We're going through it, both of us, and I'm asking him questions like, because he won't know what it's lettered until it's lettered. He doesn't know the story. He's guessing the story. He's looking at, because we don't talk about that part of it. He's always been very adamant. Don't tell me the story until I read it, because then he can give me a very impartial point of view of it. It's like, well, Dad, I kind of missed this part. And it's like, I'm looking at it, it's like, I agree with him. It's like, well, I can fix that dialogue. So
that's another great thing too, because you can, with the digital process, you can fix the stuff right away. You don't have to, in the old days, if you didn't do it yourself, you have to send it out to somebody to fix it.
Yeah.
So, and what about you, Tommy? When you see your work coming through that you've inked or drawn or whatever, and you see it going through the printer,
that I'm doing all the steps in it, I kind of like, maybe I'm just a little stuck up there. I kind of like, I like looking at the what I wrote and then start penciling because I when I do my pencils, they're really scribble scratchy.
Right.
And so when I go into inking is when it finally starts looking like a comic. But I'm not that fond of lettering, but I letter it as I'm scribbling it, as I'm doing my pencils. I go ahead and put all the dialogue in it. So I've already got it all dialogued before I may change it up as I go, but it's already pretty much everybody's all the lettering is not done, but it's all the words are written.
Right.
Before I even start inking it, I've already got it all figured out.
So when you get it ready for press, do you have a different hat on as well?
It's because I've been doing it for such a long time, and you said this a little while ago. I see so many books a day. I even though Kablam, we tell people to have their books print ready.
Right.
They're not. Most of them aren't. Where they, I can literally say and Barry and I and Jennifer, that's Barry's wife, we can say that we probably on our resume, I can say that I have put together probably, I'm not even joking, 100. Nah, that's a joke. Maybe 10,000, 20,000 books, 10,000 books that I've actually done pre-press on because, I see so many books and they're messed up and I have to fix things, little things here and there. We don't ever try to change anybody's stuff because that's not right. And as a creator, I wouldn't want anybody changing my stuff. But if I see something in the word balloon, I know is going to get chopped off, and I know that's not what they intended. I mean, you can tell sometimes when somebody's trying to be artsy fartsy and have the word balloon get chopped, when they're trying to do that.
Oh yeah.
But I have pre-pressed, processed, so many books that it's an automatic thing. It's like with the lettering and the coloring. I should be able to do a lot more books, my own stuff than I have been lately because it's second nature. I just sit there and I see a page. I don't do that. I may not be the best color, but I do a pretty good job. Like this thing that you see behind me, it's kind of fun. It's kind of cartoony. I do really good at cartoony stuff. But it just second nature. I look at something and it's kind of what we were talking about last week with the inking. I see what it needs to be. And regardless if I know how to draw, I can kind of tell what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And I ink it, so I look at the colors and I go, oh, well, I want this to pop out. I want that to go to the back. So I just start doing it and I don't think twice about it. And it's
So
just,
it's
but I do run it by my wife and Barry, and they look at it and they go, this is messed up. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll fix it.
right.
And I don't, but I usually do. And I'm a terrible speller, so I have to get them too. I'm bad. I'm a bad speller.
How long did it take you to learn to spell your last name?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how I learned how to spell my last name. But and it's not the misspelling like there and there and there.
Right.
All the different there. It's not that good. It's just terrible. Just I'll leave words out, and all of a sudden the whole dialogue. Y'all have probably seen it in our chats and stuff. I go back and I correct myself as I just start typing, and it's like I just left out about 10 of the words that I meant to say. I don't know.
I've proofread so many comics that I thought were just fine, and then I realized, oh, I've left out an entire word balloon. I've left out a word. I've left out the thing that sells the story.
Right. The point of this page, I left that whole part out.
Right. In my head, I put it in there because and
you see it, and you've looked at it 5 times, and it was there because you had it in your brain, but you didn't put it down on the.
That's why I need someone like Mike's son or Barry to just here, look this up, because I've got.
I do have a question for you though. Being Malibu stuff. So getting back to the publisher.
Right.
So when people brought stuff to Malibu, you guys, what was your process of that?
Of accepting it?
Yeah, that kinds of stuff.
Man, well, okay. Well, this gets into I
did my book and I'm bringing it to you because we're talking to, do I publish it myself or do I bring it to you? And then
if you brought it to me, I've got to read it.
Yeah.
And usually sometimes it's finished, and because somebody has teamed up with another person or whatever, and they've done their own book and they're looking for a publisher. And so, or sometimes it's just a pitch from a writer who's looking for some help. Sometimes it's a first issue script and they're looking for stuff. I have to read it.
Did you try to work teams together, or because I think that Scum of the Earth stuff I did for you guys, y'all were working out, trying to find teams to work.
Yes.
To work
So I'll use an example of Men in Black by Lowell Cunningham.
Yeah.
So Lowell Cunningham sends it in. It's a pitch for it, and he has it all broken down. He's got some story ideas. He's got who the characters are. He's got what the world is. He's already, but it's like 6, 7, 8 pages long. No script yet, but it's a great idea because it's very. It fits in with the kind of stuff that we would want to publish anyway. It's got aliens. It's got the secret government society. It's not necessarily superheroes. And you could sort of see Lowell's a good enough writer that you could see on the page of his pitch what the comic could be. And then, so then there were 4 of us. So I would have to present it to, I'd give it to Chris Alm right away. And I would say, Chris, I think this is something we could do. Can you read it today or tomorrow and get back to me? And if he likes it, then we're sort of on the right path. And then we give it to Dave Olbrich, and Dave Olbrich would read it. And Dave would usually say, well, I don't understand. And so, and then we go to Scott, and Scott would run some numbers about what we thought it could sell. And then we would decide to take it in. And we'd find where in the schedule it could go, because we were like 6 months to a year ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
And we'd get a slot for it, and then we'd find an artist. And we usually had a giant list of artists who wanted to work or were trying to find a way to break in and needed a break or whatever. And we found a guy that we'd liked, that we've been working with before, Sandy Carruthers. And so we brought him in to be the artist. And so we matched him up. And then we had a couple of letterers that we used on a regular basis, and cover artists that I thought would be good for sort of the spooky mystery, Men in Black aliens kind of thing. And so you just, as the editor, you're just sort of putting everybody together and hoping. And there's no Zoom in those days, and there's no text messaging, there's no email, so it's all post office stuff. And so you're just sort of being a facilitator between all the different parties. And then and Lowell lived in Kentucky or Tennessee, one of those places. And Sandy Carruthers lived in Canada. He lived on an island in Canada. So there's custom stuff you have to work out. It's stuff that doesn't matter anymore because now he would just send the pages digitally and it'd all be done.
Yeah.
So and that's sort of what it is. Does it fit? Do I like it? Does it fit with what we're hoping to publish? Do we have an imprint where it belongs? Do we have an artist who could do justice to the material? And do we think we can make money at it? And all of those factors have to work.
If it was a new book, how worried were you that you're going to get the second issue out of them?
No, because that's the key too, is that from talking to Lowell, the old fashioned way on the telephone.
Yeah.
These stories were going to come out of Lowell regardless. And so he had way more stories than we had room to publish. And so I didn't have any worries that his script would be late. And Sandy was driven. Sandy had a day job and comics was his evening thing. And so, but he was committed to doing, his page every day or whatever. And if there was a sense that the schedule was going to run into a craziness because, people weren't necessarily making a living at this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I might wait till I had 2 issues done before I solicited one, which is another aspect of being a publisher with some pockets is you're not in a rush to publish everything.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get to a point where you publish 1 issue and then 3 months later you have the second issue.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't huge page rates, but it was enough to keep us going.
Right.
I mean, it was a while before I was able to quit my day job and work for you guys full time and Marvel full time. And
that's the thing too, because people weren't making a ton of money. So you really I don't want to be in a position where I'm driving people too hard, because I get it. I understand. It's people have other things they have to do. Independent comics doesn't pay people's bills, unfortunately. And so I don't want to sort of sandbag a creator by putting a schedule together that isn't going to work for them. And we were doing
Malibu did eventually, that was
because we, Dave Oberts likes to say you got to feed the beast, and at a certain point, when you're doing 30 books a month to meet cash flow and to keep the empire going, the beast has to be fed. And it's like television. They're going to put an episode of NCIS on every week. And so you better have all the other pieces together.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, corporate comics becomes that. So that's where we are. And look at that. We've run out our hour. Anybody want to say some final words, Mr. Mike?
Actually, I wanted to ask you, you've got the mystery project here at Silverline.
Yes, I do.
You do. And that's something that's still being, in shadows and whatever. But, as far as published or be published, would you have ever, is this a project that you would have liked to have done by yourself if you had to? Or was it just strictly, I'm not going to even try this by myself. I'd rather be a publisher or have a publisher take care of this.
I think
or did you like Roland so much that you had to work with him?
Yeah. No, I see it as, so the project began as an animation pitch years ago. I sold it to Universal Studios, and Universal Studios sat on it for 2 years, and then I got the rights back.
You finally got it back, yeah.
And I had done a lot of stuff on it. I'd done a script, and I had done background material, and it was one of those things that I really, really liked it. And I wasn't, and like anybody else, I can't let anything go.
Yeah.
It's like I put all this work into it. There's got to be something to it, and I want to find out. And fortunately, I know Roland, and I know Roland has, oddly enough, a publishing company. At the time I pitched it to Roland, I was under the impression that I was going to be too busy to self-publish, because I had convinced myself that I had a TV show that was going to get greenlit. I'd already done the development work on a TV show. I'd already put in the time. They were going to take it out, and I was convinced I'm going to, and I don't want to be self-publishing at the same time I'm trying to run a TV show.
Yeah. So
I'll find somebody who does all those things for me, which is Roland. And I sent it to Roland, and of course my TV, as always, Roland accepted the project. My TV show didn't happen because, post COVID, nobody likes anything.
Yeah.
And so now I'm with Roland. But if Roland hadn't come along, and if Roland rejected it or whatever, then I would consider going out and finding an artist and saying, let's do this.
And when Roland told me that you had an idea, and I'm like, we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
and Roland's like, you want me to tell you what it is? And I'm like, no, it's Tom Mason. Let's do it. Do it. I'm with you.
And it's we got a great artist, a guy named Henry Martinez. And again, because independent comics don't pay a living wage, he's got other things he's also working on as well to sort of pay the bills. So I get pages as they come in. I got like the first 4 or 5 pages, and they're just it's fantastic. And it was I think everything is sort of falling into place. Roland and I have already talked about who's going to color it. Roland and I have already talked about Mike Belcher doing the lettering when it comes up.
Yay!
So Mike is going to see it, in its pre-industrial form.
Cool.
So yeah, I am super excited about it, and but my part's done. All I have to do when Henry delivers enough pages, I got to go through my script again and tweak the script to match the art.
Yeah.
Because enough time has passed where I think, oh, I bet I could say that better now. And then and Henry has done certain things with the art where it's like, oh, I see what he did. He took I tried to cram everything into one panel because I'm a lazy writer, and he sort of spread it out and gave it some air. So now I've got to sort of stretch the words accordingly. And so, yeah, so there. Cool. But I also have a thing that I'm looking at where I want to self-publish.
Cool.
And so I'm planning. So to me, it's not publisher or be published. It's going to be publisher and be published. So I'm going to do both, because I think what I love about comics is I love making them. Like, I love writing them, but I also love watching all the pieces come together. I like to see the artist interpret the script. I like to see the lettering. I like to see the coloring. I like to get the input from all those people who are working on it. I love the process of when it goes to the printer and then that box of books comes back. Like Mike was talking about earlier in the show. It's like I'm glad that digital didn't replace everything, because I'm one of those people who likes opening up the box like it's Christmas and looking at the new comic, and then 5 minutes later finding the typo. And so but there's that moment where I am like a kid. Thing that I had a part in making shows up, and that never gets old.
Yeah,
for me. So that's where we are.
It is fun. It's definitely fun.
Tommy, you got any final words?
I need to finish Mystery Girls number 5. That's my guilted into finishing it.
Because the things can't happen until
it's done. I just got to finish it. I don't know.
It's done. It's Floramonte done.
It's Floramonte done. No, it's done. Most of it's even colored, dude.
All right, everybody. Roland Mann will be done with his March Madness by next Sunday. We're looking forward to it.
Yep.
I
be back on the show.
Want to thank the silent Tim TK for watching the board and keeping us all honest. Much appreciated. Thanks to Pops. We wish Pops get well soon. He's got his own little March Madness. Roberta will be back here next week as well, I hope. And I'm just going to go back to being a smartass on this show. So thanks, everyone. Everybody take care. Mr. Tim, roll credits.
Hi, my name is Paul Kupperberg. Make mine Silverline.